was first introduced to the golden ratio in the 6th grade by my math teacher, Mr. Bowden. We were done for the year, and he just wanted to explore some other math topics that we might be interested in, some things that excited him. So he introduced us to the golden ratio. It was a proportion found all throughout the world and only really made an impact on the modern world in the Renaissance. It was a structure and a shape that was so mathematically pleasing that some could argue that it had a part in defining beauty. I latched onto this concept and I ran with it. I looked through everything in the golden ratio, I studied everything in the golden ratio, and I just so interested in it. Wherever I looked, I found it. I found it in trees, logos, ancient Greek buildings, the Renaissance. I found it everywhere. And so I decided to make a video about it. So without further ado, hello and welcome to the history of the golden ratio. The golden ratio is a fascinating mathematical concept found throughout history, found in art, nature, even in the human body and DNA. In this video, we will take a deep dive into the history of the golden ratio, from its discoveries in ancient Greece to its applications in modern day art and design. Now, before we begin, the golden ratio can be represented by the Greek letter phi, and here we have the capital and lowercase letter for phi, and it roughly translates to this long number, which is the golden ratio. Now, before we get into the whole when exactly was it discovered and when was it applied, yada yada yada, I must apologize. My room is somewhat of a mess, and I do have a sunburn from a tennis match, so that's my bad. I should have probably fixed it beforehand, but I was just so excited to get on this concept that I had to share with you. Although there is no written mention of the golden ratio or the divine proportion throughout ancient Greece, there is the inclusion of it in one of the 7 wonders, the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Essentially, the ratio of the slant height of the pyramid to half the base dimension is 1.61804, which is extremely close to the golden ratio. The golden ratio was first defined in Euclid's book Elements. It was in the 5th book of the series, where he looked into how the golden ratio can support geometry that he was working on at the time. But the golden ratio wasn't originally known as the golden ratio. It was first known as the divine proportion. It was thought that getting as close to that proportion as possible would bring you closer to whatever god that they were worshipping at that time. It was believed to have divine properties and was used in art and architecture to create harmony and balance. One of the most famous examples of the golden ratio in ancient Greece is the Pantheon in Athens. The dimensions of the Pantheon are said to be based on the golden ratio, giving it a sense of balance and symmetry that would bring you closer to the gods. Basically, it was the Greeks that first discovered the aesthetic use of the golden ratio in art and architecture and used it to create some of the most iconic works in history. Take the statue of Apollo, for example. It's one of the most famous works of Greek art. Notice how the proportions on the body are based on the golden ratio, with the distance from the navel to the ground being 1.68 times greater than the distance from the top of the head to the navel. But the golden ratio wasn't just used for big architectural designs that were going to last past the civilization that it was built in. It was also used for just pottery vases and just everyday home items. The Greeks believed that beauty was not just a matter of subjective taste, but it was based on objective principles of harmony and proportions and symmetry. The golden ratio was one of the ways they expressed these principles, and it became a key part of their artistic and architectural vocabulary. We wouldn't see much of the golden ratio after ancient Greece until the Renaissance, where the golden ratio experienced a resurgence in popularity, along with the other Greek philosophies that also faced a resurgence in the Renaissance. they valued a lot of humanities and the arts and naturalism at the time, which was perfect for the golden ratio because that's where it originated in. But before the golden ratio can go back into the Renaissance, there was this man called Leonardo Fibonacci that posed this question called the rabbit problem. And in it, it said, a man put a male-female pair of newly born rabbits in a field, and rabbits take a month to mature before mating. 1 month after mating, females give birth to one male-female pair and then mate again. No rabbits die. How many rabbit pairs is there after 1 year? How would you go about solving this type of problem? Now, he took this and he ran with it. So essentially what he did was just go through the motions. First, there were 2 baby rabbits, and then those rabbits, after a month, grew into 2 adult rabbits. And those 2 adult rabbits, of course, live on because none of the rabbits die, and they also reproduce, having 2 more baby rabbits. And then the original pair of rabbits, of course, reproduce again, but they also remain alive, so they're the next month over, and they grow up. And this pair has another set of rabbits, and so the cycle continues. These rabbits live on and have another pair of rabbits. These rabbits can now reproduce, and these rabbits grow up. And it just goes on and on. I'll continue it for you. Sorry, it's a bit squished, but from that problem, he then counted the amount of pairs that each month had and made a set of numbers that were now called the Fibonacci sequence. So from the first set, he had 1. Then when that pair grew up and there was 1 again, then that pair had some rabbits, so there was now 2 sets of rabbits. So, and it continues, so it's 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and eventually 13 sets of rabbits. So eventually he got this set of numbers. The cool thing about this set of numbers is that you could take the previous number and add it to the current number and get the new number. So of course, 1 plus 1, 2, 1 plus 2, 3, 2 plus 3, 5, etc., etc. And you can just go up the chain. Now, I know you're asking, what the hell does this have to do with the golden ratio? It's not even a ratio, it's just a set of numbers. But if you take the current number and divide it by the previous number, you get 1. And then you get 2. And then you get 1.5. And then you get 1.3, repeating. And then you get 1.625. And so the farther that you get in the sequence, and the more you divide, the closer and the closer and the closer you get to the golden ratio, meaning that the limit of this sequence is the golden ratio. Just so you can have a visual, I put a graph here so you can see how it oscillates around the golden ratio, which is 1.618033, etc., etc. Well, the Fibonacci sequence definitely had relevance to the golden ratio. It wasn't actually discovered until the 1600s by mathematicians such as Johann Kepler. Basically, for the Fibonacci sequence, if you take a square with the side lengths of the first number, say 1, and you attach it to another square with the second number, which is also 1, and then keep attaching it to numbers with the side lengths of the next numbers in the sequence, you will get a structure that resembles a spiral. And essentially in this spiral, you can find the ways that nature likes to position its plants. For instance, flower petals. You can find the number of petals on many flowers, such as daisies, lilies, and sunflowers, to often follows the Fibonacci sequence, which is closely related to the golden ratio. Spiral patterns, for instance, are another big thing. The spiral pattern is found in seashells, nautilus shells, and the horns of some animals, such as rams and antelopes, also follow the golden ratios. Now, we'll get back to why the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio are such importance together, but I want to get back into the Renaissance and how the golden ratio is used throughout that. Now, one of the biggest users of the golden ratio in the Renaissance was Leonardo da Vinci. One of the most well-known pieces of art that Fibonacci used using the golden ratio was the Vitruvian Man, and I'm sure you know it. It's the piece of art where the man is laying supine with 2 arms and 2 legs, showing what the perfect man would have been with it when Zeus didn't separate their bodies, into man and female. He used the golden ratio in creating the proportions of that human, and he used it also in the Mona Lisa. Even in the canvas itself, the Mona Lisa is using the golden ratio. The height of the canvas compared to the width of the canvas divided by it is 1.618, or the golden ratio. It's really the use of the golden ratio that gives the Mona Lisa its sense of enduring appeal and has made it the source of fascination for artists, designers, and scientists for centuries. Despite the golden ratio being used for most of the most iconic works of the Renaissance, architecture is where the golden ratio truly shone. Now, it was used in the Florence Cathedral, which is one of the most famous buildings in the Renaissance. It had a dome that is based on the golden ratio, and the ratio of the height of the dome to the diameter is 1.618, creating a sense of balance and symmetry that is truly breathtaking. Okay. Sorry, she wanted to join me. Anyways, in the modern era, the golden ratio has found new applications in fields such as mathematics, science, design. For instance, in mathematics, the golden ratio is used in the Fibonacci sequence, which I discovered recently. And you can also see the golden ratio in hurricanes when you're looking at satellite footage of Earth. You can find it in the positioning of universes. It's amazing what you can actually see when you're just looking for patterns in nature. You can also find the golden ratio in the human body. It's used everywhere. The proportions of the human body, such as the length of the arms and the legs, and the distance between the navel and the floor, and the ratio of the length of the hand and the forearm, all are believed related to the golden ratio. For instance, if you were to take your finger and hold it in this position right here, like this, this right here, the length of your knuckle to your joint right here, that is supposed to be the golden rectangle right there. I don't know if it is, but it's supposed to be. And if you curl your hand up like this, that is also supposed to be the golden spiral. And if you take the proportions of your finger, it goes from 2 units of measure to 3 units of measure to 5 units of measure right here. And it's also the same for your arm. So the length of this, your hand joint to your ankle, to your wrist, is supposed to be 2 units of measure, and then your elbow to your wrist is supposed to be 3 units of measure, and then from your elbow to your shoulder is supposed to be 5 units of measure, directly copying your arm and the Fibonacci sequence, which is the golden ratio. There are other ways of checking how mathematically proportionate your face is. For instance, the length of your face is supposed to be 1.618 in proportion to the width of your face. And the length of your eye, or the width of your eye, is supposed to also be the distance between your eyes, which is also supposed to be the width of your ear. And the distance between your eyebrows and your forehead is supposed to be the same between your eyebrows and your nose and your chin. The golden ratio can even be found in DNA, where the oscillation between one point to the other point in the DNA, which is either a peak or a trough, is 1 unit in comparison to the actual height of the DNA or the width of the DNA. And nowadays, the golden ratio, or specifically the golden spiral, is being used in cancer detection research to try and see where breast cancer is before we can detect it with other means. And it's actually working, which is a really cool part. The golden ratio is now being used for website design, video game design, logo design, even like building design. Even the way the gun is positioned in first-person shooters has a connection to the golden spiral, which is a part of the golden ratio. So the next time that you see a spiral pattern in nature or a beautifully constructed building, think that maybe the golden ratio may have played some part in its creation. Thank you for watching. I just want to apologize first off for the lighting, the camera, the mic. Nothing is really good quality. I only plan on making one video, but I had a really fun time doing this and researching for it. I want to thank Ms. Bland for taking the time and setting up this capstone and giving me the opportunity to do this. And I also want to thank Dr. Peace for basically settling on the medium with me, because I wanted to make sure that there was a visual element so that you can see what was happening and what was the structural elements that were having the golden ratio incorporated with it, whatever. Big thanks to those two. Big thanks to Mr. Broughton, of course, my 6th grade math teacher. He was really old when he taught me, and he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. And I don't know, I want to kind of dedicate this in his honor, because he is the one that taught me this in the first place, and I honestly would have never been this interested in math and want to pursue a degree in it if I didn't have his class. So I really want to thank him. So thanks. Thanks for watching again.